Welcome to Lead Different.
Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to the Lead Different podcast. Today's conversation is very special. What happens when leadership forged in combat meets leadership shaped by faith? What does it look like to lead men into battle and then later lead souls into purpose? Our guest today embodies that journey in a powerful way. I'm honored to welcome Father John Carney, a former U.S. Army Airborne Ranger, Vietnam veteran, longtime pastor, and vocations director for the Archdiocese of Santa Fe. This was one of those conversations that stays with you. Father John shares some gripping war stories from Vietnam, reflections on survival, brotherhood, and sacrifice. And then he draws a striking parallel between leading in the military and leading a parish. We talk about discipline, trust, clarity under pressure, and what true servant leadership really looks like when lives are on the line on the battlefield and souls are on the line in the pews. As Why Not Leadership looks ahead to 2026, we're excited to lean more boldly into a faith-filled direction and more openly embracing our Catholic roots. And we couldn't imagine a better person to help kick off this season. This episode is about courage, calling, and the kind of leadership that transcends titles. So lean in, open your heart, and enjoy this powerful conversation with Father John Carney.
Why not leadership? Why not lead different?
Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Lead Different podcast. I have a fantastic guest today. Somebody I got to meet, just happened to be at my office at work at the Newman Center at the University of New Mexico, and he was touring the place with Father Adrian, and he comes in my office and he does a very smart salute, and he actually did a correct salute. So I knew he had to be a military guy. And then he looks over at my military. Us military guys, we all got to have a brag wall, right? Yes. And so I got a couple of things. He says, "Hey, you were in the Army, 3rd Armored Cav." So he recognized my unit, and believe it or not, he was on a fast tour, and I took about 20 minutes of his time just getting to know. We have a fun story together, but our guest today is Father John Carney, and since we're not doing this the old-fashioned way, we're actually live in a studio. Father John, I'm going to read your introduction, and then we're going to get started.
Great. Yeah.
So let me introduce you to Father John Carney. He's a Catholic priest of the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, whose life uniquely bridges military service and pastoral ministry. Before answering the call to the priesthood, he served 20 years as a U.S. Army infantry officer, including deployments in Vietnam, Germany, and Korea, retiring with the rank of lieutenant colonel. He looks really good for having done all those very tough assignments. Thank you very much for your service, Father Carney. Ordained in 1991, Father Carney has served as a pastor at several New Mexico parishes, including Holy Child Parish in Tijeras, where my daughter went to school, Immaculate Heart of Mary in Los Alamos, and Church of the Incarnation in Rio Rancho, where my cousin is currently the pastor. So
yes,
he also served as the vocations director for the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, guiding future priests in discerning their call to the priesthood. He is known for his disciplined leadership, deep faith, and pastoral wisdom. Father Carney brings a rare perspective shaped by both military command and sacramental service. As you guys know, this is the Lead Different podcast, and when we talk about leadership and leading different, I couldn't think of a better contrast than somebody who's led at a really high level in the military and then who's also led at a high level as a priest. So welcome to the show, Father John Carney.
Thank you very much, Dan. Yeah, well, I don't know about the high level stuff. Privates thought I led at a high level, but generals thought I was just a private, kind of. So it's great to be with you.
It's a matter of perspective. I think
Right.
one of the things that we have to remember as leaders, I remember I was a young lieutenant with the 3rd Armored Cav. So we both served in the 3rd Armored Cav about 20 some years apart, which is pretty cool.
No, I wasn't in the ACR.
Oh, you just recognized
82nd Airborne. I recognize the white over black.
Well,
Or the
that-
red
that-
over the red over white.
The red over white,
Right.
yeah. So I remember being a young lieutenant. I had a young private that was just sharp, high-speed kid. We promoted him to specialist as fast as we could. And I remember getting a letter from him like 4 years after I got out of the military. He found my address and he said, "Sir, just want to let you know I became a Ranger." Just like I said I would one day, because he was I was a quartermaster officer, so I wasn't an infantry officer. This wasn't an infantry kid. This was a fuel specialist, 91 Alpha, and so for him to keep in touch, we don't know what kind of impact we have on people.
That's
and
for sure.
We don't always get to hear those stories. So that was kind of cool for me, but you've probably had an impact on a lot of people. And the reason I wanted you on the show, and the reason I wanted to introduce you to our audience is we talk about leadership all the time, and you have a different perspective, because there's a way we lead in the military, and there's things that we have to get done, and if we don't do our job well, people die.
That's right.
And then you took that and went one step further. There's the leadership as a priest, as a pastor, and as a leader of future priests, that if you don't do your job well, people go to hell.
Yeah. Interesting how you introduced that, because I thought when I retired from the Army, again, as Lieutenant Colonel, I was an Airborne Ranger infantry guy, and it's a fairly rough life. There's not a lot of sensitivity.
Right.
And I thought I would have to do a complete change, to be a priest and to be available to the people. And after a few years, I said, no, I need to get back to my old style a little bit, to take charge.
Right.
We used to have 11 general orders before your day, Dan.
Right.
And we had to memorize them. And the first general order is to take charge of this post and all government property in view.
Right.
And then that came to me. I'm the pastor of a parish. This is my parish. I'm
Right.
responsible for all it does or fails to do.
Yeah.
And so I went back into my toolkit of leadership as a soldier and tried to remember and to apply those principles. And that's what they are, principles, as a pastoral leader in Holy Mother Church.
Yeah, and it's so great that you mentioned that, because I remember being a 22-year-old second lieutenant. You show up at your unit, and then you sign for all the equipment.
Oh, yeah.
It's millions of dollars worth of equipment. So I had 22 fuel tankers, and we fueled the 3rd Armored Cav, and those M1 tanks don't get a lot of miles to the gallon, and so they need a lot of fuel, and so that's what we did. And but I love the approach. So that's a great question to start with. What was different and what was the same about leading in the military and then leading as a pastor and as a vocations director?
Well, since we spoke, I thought a lot about that, and I didn't think about these things for many years. So I appreciate the opportunity to get current.
Yeah.
The simple answer: what's the difference in leadership as a soldier, as an officer, and leadership as a pastor? Is none. There is no difference, because there are principles of leadership. Right. And they look different, they sound different, it seems, in those two different situations, but they're not. They're the same thing, the transparency, the honesty, the care for taking care of the mission and taking care of the soldiers, or the mission of the church is to bring souls to Christ and into eternal life in heaven, and you take care of your people, you love your people, and you guide them and shepherd them forward. So I can't think of a lot of differences in terms of principles of leadership in those two different, apparently very different. Yeah. People say, how did you become a priest after being a soldier? So, there's a lot of similarities. Yeah. We wear a uniform.
Right.
We're prepared to die for the organization we now enter. Right. We're in it for life. Or until, I'm still a Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army.
Right.
Once you retire, you're still in active service. So there's more similarities than anything else. Yeah. Surprising to me after I was ordained. I kind of said, I got to get back to some of my old ways, because there, the initial challenges of being the young priest, and the ego was kind of working too hard sometimes. So it was, it was a challenge, but a fun challenge, really.
Well, you survived Vietnam. Not a lot, and it wasn't like you were in the rear with the gear like I
No,
was.
I wasn't,
You
no.
were out there on the front lines.
Yeah.
Leading in battle in a tough environment, in a not politically popular war,
Yeah.
and then you had to deal with coming back.
Yeah.
And then having a long career.
Yeah.
You ended up staying for a long time.
Yeah, I had 2 tours in Vietnam. My first as a first lieutenant. I was a platoon leader with the 3rd Brigade 82nd Airborne Division.
Okay.
And we worked the northern part of South Vietnam, and then we moved to the Saigon area. And so I was a grunt platoon leader.
Yeah.
And, the platoon was like, full strength would be like 43 soldiers, but we usually had about 30. And we were like an armed gang that had a mission each day to find the bad guys and engage them.
Right.
The mission of the infantry is to close with the enemy by fire and maneuver and to capture or kill him.
Right.
My second tour, interestingly enough, perhaps, was more dangerous. I was a captain at my second tour, and I was there for what's known as the Easter Offensive, 1972. Right. The American soldiers, by and large, had gone home, and there was a rather small group of advisors left, and I was an advisor to what's called the G3 Air.
Right.
The operations section air of a division.
Okay.
And although I advised the lieutenant colonel, who was the G3, an Arvin, a Vietnamese officer,
Right.
he didn't know the business. Good man, but he just didn't know what I knew. I was well trained, so I actually became the G3 Air. And by that time, again, the Americans had got home, and the Easter Offensive began on Good Friday, 30 March 1972 at 12:01 hours, and every division of North Vietnam was in the South in the next few days.
Wow.
And the northern part, right north of, I was in the city of Hue, H-U-E.
Right.
The northern part in Quang Tri fell, and about 6 weeks after the invasion started. So it was hairy. We were getting hit by 130 artillery, and the enemy had tanks, T-54 Russian tanks.
Oh,
So it was exciting. I volunteered for both tours.
Yeah.
70% of the soldiers who fought in Vietnam were volunteers.
Really?
70%.
Yeah. We only hear about the draft and all those kids
Sure.
that got.
Well, they might have
one
been
day they
drafted,
were.
but then after being drafted, going
Right.
to their basic training, they said, I want to go to Vietnam.
Nice.
There's something in a young man's heart that
Right.
wants to prove himself.
Yeah.
It wasn't, most of those kids didn't have a clue about the spread of communism and stopping the Red Plague in Vietnam. They just wanted to get into a fight and see if they
could win.
If they could win and if they would be brave.
There's something I remember this. So, like Father Carney, I also went through Airborne and Ranger training. I just didn't get to use it in a battlefield like you did. It was just went through the training. But I always talk about this. One of the what's the proper way to react to an ambush?
Yeah.
You got to turn towards the fire and run towards it and fire. And you
right.
don't know
That's
that you're going to live.
No.
You know that's the best chance you give for most of your buddies to live.
That's right.
But leadership is that way. I think the people that are going to succeed when they get into that situation is where there's that camaraderie
Absolutely.
and that love for each other.
Absolutely.
Because
they would never admit that, but absolutely right.
you care about the guy
love him.
standing next to you, and you want
Absolutely.
him to live. And if one of us is going to live, I'm okay if it's me or him.
I
Right?
don't know about that. I think we kind of rooted for ourselves, but definitely. The brotherhood, the comradeship of the soldier. I think especially the infantry soldier in combat.
Sure.
It's the Band of Brothers, that great series that HBO did.
Yeah.
It was so realistic. It was about 25 years ago now.
Right.
And it was so realistic. And I commend it to anyone who hasn't seen it. Watch it. It's called Band of Brothers, originally released by HBO, but you probably can have it streamed at a number of different platforms.
Oh yeah, Band of Brothers is good. When I was in the ROTC, we would watch Apocalypse Now.
Well,
And that was so Hollywood,
Yeah,
right?
it is Hollywood. It was a bunch of baloney.
But Band of Brothers, you highly
Oh,
recommend.
it was the real deal.
Well, there you go. From
Yeah.
somebody who was there. So
it was the real deal.
Yeah, good stuff.
Deer
good stuff.
Hunter and Apocalypse Now and all that. It was a lot of rubbish, I thought.
So, Father, you did one of the most difficult jobs too. So one of the reasons one of my current assignments is I work with Father Adrian, who's the current vocations director for the Archdiocese of Santa Fe.
Adrian Cisneros, great
Father
young
Adrian
man.
Cisneros,
Yeah, I love him.
doing a great job
Sure
there at the
is.
Newman Center.
Yeah.
But that's got to be an even tougher job. And I'll tell you, I'm going to have on the podcast Father Peter Pomposello. He is the Army recruiter for chaplains in the Army.
Excellent,
so he's
yeah.
under the Archdiocese of his own Archdiocese, but also the Archdiocese of the Armed Forces. So you talk about a tough job, but you did that difficult job.
Oh, yeah, for 9 years.
What's tough? What's tougher? Recruiting getting young new soldiers and getting them ready for battle, or getting these young men or sometimes young men, sometimes middle-aged men, but these young people getting ready for the priesthood. What were some of the challenges?
Yeah, you need to, we've had huge problems in the Archdiocese of Santa Fe.
Right.
If you don't know that, you haven't been watching what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I became vocation director. I was ordained in 1991, and I became vocation director in 93.
Okay.
And I served for 9 years. And we were in absolute crisis mode at that time because of the sexual abuse of children by ordained priests. And Bishop Sheehan asked me if I'd take the job, and he said, "John, don't let them get past you. Make sure they're clean." And so I vetted them carefully. A lot of it was gut feelings.
Right.
I interviewed, I probably, frankly, encouraged or accepted 1 out of every 4 or 5 men that I interviewed. And some of the reasons I wouldn't is a lot of times you get a guy 30 years old, never really had a job. He's bouncing around like a rubber ball.
Right.
He didn't show the consistency you'd like to see, and so lots of different reasons. We were very careful in the psychosexual aspect of a person's health, to make sure that after the lessons we had learned and we're still learning, probably still learning until this very day. Yeah. So it was a challenge. But a lot of it, a good percentage was gut feelings. This may sound ridiculous, but men know men. Yeah. We know our brothers. Yeah. And when somebody is whistling Dixie at you. So I did that for 9 years. I made a few mistakes, I'll have to tell you. I had one guy that we ordained and later offended, and he had been a Christian brother for like 30 years. And they said he's good to go, he's wonderful, and he wasn't. And I don't think they were truthful with me in that. And it was another case as well. But it was tough. But one of the things I had to do was dismiss guys all the time, even those who were accepted prior to me becoming vocation director.
Right. And
I would often tell Archbishop Sheehan, I said, "This guy's got to go. He's just not gonna love the people of God and care for them, and we can't trust him."
Right.
This is after maybe he was in seminary for 2 years.
Yeah.
And the Archbishop, "Oh, John, give him another chance, give him another year." I said, "No." So it was very interesting. Every time I argued with Archbishop Sheehan, may he rest in peace, about a particular case, I'd say, "Well, look, I'm not going to. You're the Archbishop, so we'll do as you say. I resign." And he goes, "Oh, John, don't resign." So I always got my way. It was kind of worked out fairly well.
But you probably learned that, there's not a lot of people there's a certain, and I tell people this all the time, I spent 11 years in the military. You learn how to have those tough conversations.
Yeah, you do.
Right? With the colonel, when you're the young lieutenant and the colonel says, "Well, sir,
how
we'll do what you want, but
how far can I push this guy to get what I want?"
Exactly.
So, and hopefully what I want is what God wants. Not always the case, obviously, because I'm a failed, weak man. Nonetheless, you have to have a vision and you have to have an opinion, and you try to bring that to fruition for the glory of God. Yeah.
Those are tough conversations, and I remember Archbishop Sheehan was such a nice man.
Oh, he was so nice. Yeah.
Just
and I used that to my advantage.
Yeah. And so I could see that probably wasn't an argument he was going to win.
John, please. He would say no.
I bet you heard John, please a few times.
Yeah. He thought I was a little crazy, and I used that to my advantage as well. So
that is so good.
Yeah.
But you brought something up, and I think it's important to talk about this because, as Catholics, we get challenged on this all the time. Especially from people. "Oh, I left the church because of the sex abuse scandal."
Absolutely.
And I say there's no reason for that because, and you just said it yourself. You even as a priest, you admit, "Hey, I'm weak and I'm a sinner," and we all are, right? We all have our faults, and we all have. And at the end of the day, the church is run by humans, and we're all weak.
True.
And we're all sinners. You do your best to screen out any potential?
Well, I did, but they didn't do their best prior. I mean, for decades, they were being very careless. You know, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
How did this happen? We have something like 80 names on our credibly accused list. 80.
80.
We're not that big a diocese. No, so it was really bad leadership.
Yeah.
Sorry, bishops. Sorry. It was bad leadership for decades that brought that about. And we've learned our lessons. I thank God for the press and for lawyers. Without them, the company would have kept us quiet. So, you know, we learned the hard way. We learned the hard way. But hopefully we've learned. I love the church.
Right.
She's my mother.
Right.
And I'm not leaving my mother's side. You know, you mentioned those who have left the church because of these issues. I understand them. Matter of fact, in many occasions, some would say, John, this person left the church. She's really angry. Her son was hurt, whatever. Yeah. I'd say, do you think I could speak with her? And I did that on many, many occasions. And I knew one thing. After I had an hour or an hour and a half with the person, when they left, they said, that priest is madder than I am.
Yeah.
So it was like they had someone on the inside in their mind who was going to fix this mess.
Right.
You know?
Well, and it's, again, I think the biggest issue is how we dealt with it, right? The fact that it was covered up.
Absolutely.
Right. Sometimes, you know, even today, you know, when things like this come up, I say, hey, bring him to the light. Bring it to the light, investigate it, and guess what? Because the evil doesn't survive in the light.
Transparency and light are a bleach to badness and to evil.
Yeah.
They just kill it, and it's absolutely. And transparency is an integral part of being a good leader. It is. Be honest.
Right.
Tell it like it is.
Tell the
Sir,
truth.
I screwed up. I made a mistake, and I'll fix it. You know?
Yeah, we were talking earlier before we talked on the phone, and I was talking about Jocko Willink and extreme ownership. You know, when you're in the military, you go to the AAR, and you know when a mission goes bad, and you're doing that after action review. Nobody wants to go over we said what was supposed to happen, and what did happen, and why did it happen, right? Yeah. And when it goes bad, you hate going to that AAR, but the best AARs are the ones where the leader, and Jocko Willink talks about it, calls it extreme ownership. Yeah, and he remembers being in a situation, as a Navy SEAL where, they had friendly fire, and we lost some of our own and some of the Allied troops. And he just went in there, and instead of thinking, okay, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, and if I had had this, he said, wait, what did I do? Yeah. And so if you start with, what did I do? And he said,
and if you're the leader, if you're the leader, you are responsible for all your unit did or failed to do, even if it wasn't your fault.
Exactly.
You take the fault.
Right.
Because you're the leader. You're talking about the AAR, the after action review.
Right.
Which is a critical thing that
right.
all leaders should do in every business.
In every business. I love it.
Yeah. Do an after action review. What was good? What was bad? What lessons have we learned?
What can we do better next time?
How are we going to fix this? Absolutely.
Yeah. And if we do that enough, you get the iterations and you do get better. You get better in business. You get better in leadership. I tell people if it's worth doing it badly. Yeah. Just do it. Just do it. Learn from it. So many people just want to stand on the sidelines and I'm not ready to do that. I'm not ready to do that. And you find out in the military, you get to your post and they say, by the way, Lieutenant, you got the range on Wednesday. I've been here 2 days, sir. I don't know what to do. You'll figure it out. Yeah. You'll figure it out. And guess what? The next time you run it, you're going to do it even better. And then you're going to do it even better every time.
And you mentioned taking, responsibility. It's on me. There's nothing more cleaner or refreshing to hear that. Yeah. You could be really steamed at a person for whatever. Mm-hmm. And if he or she says, my fault, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I messed that up. It's like all forgiven. Mm-hmm. I learned that trick as a little kid. I was always in trouble. Yeah. And my Irish mother would catch me. What are you doing? I told you to stay out of that trouble again. And I said, Mom, I'm guilty. I'm so sorry, Mom. It's my fault. I'll never do it again. She goes, all right, good. Here, have some cookies. Go to bed now. So it's not a means of manipulation to take responsibility, but it's beautiful and it fixes stuff, and then you can really fix it. After,
yeah. No, I was going to say that's what confession is like for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. There are the other day, I know Father Adrian well, and so I consider him a friend, and I needed to go to confession, and I saw that he was going to be my confessor that day, and something in me said, oh man, do I really? Maybe I just wait.
We all feel that way.
And I was
Yeah.
like, and I said to myself, that's what the devil wants me to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Because then I still feel guilty. Then I'm keeping it, and I'm separated, right,
right.
from God. So if you're not Catholic, you're probably wondering, how does this work? But then I said to myself, that I'm not going to let the devil win. I'm going to go in there, and I do face to face. I just like doing it that way. It just makes me feel more accountable. So I sit across from Father, and I told him, I said, hey, I almost didn't come in because what I'm going to tell you. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
And his Father De Palma used to say, well, at least you're not trying out all the sins. I like it when if you're coming in with the same thing over and over. We can work on that. But if you're trying everything, a different thing every week, but and I said to him, and he said, that's the best thing you can do, because that's what you didn't let you might have lost the battle, but you won the war because you're in here and we're going to clean it up. And that's kind of what you did. Even as a little kid, you just say, you know what, you say to God, hey God, I screwed up. I'm here to tell you through my confessor, and for someone who's watching who hasn't gone through that process, I just love confession, and it's a great sacrament that I'm able to go and say, you know what, Father, I've sinned, and this is what I did, and please forgive me. And you got to be truly sorry. And and some of us have battles, right? Some of the things we're battling things, and that's why it's that we do over and over. But you got to be truly sorry, and if you truly are, then you can truly be forgiven. And I always say, man, if I'm going to get hit by a car, I hope it's right after confession. So that
forgiven and right in the head.
But tell us about that process. How would you explain that to someone who, I don't want to confess to some guy. I want to confess to Jesus directly.
Well, I'll give you a good example. Shortly after I was ordained, this woman called and said, I need to have my confession heard. I said, fine, yeah. Well, we have confessions on these hours. And she says, no, I'd like to sit down and talk with you. I said, oh, good. So we made an appointment. She came by I was at St. Thomas Aquinas Church in Rio Rancho. She came by, closed the door and sat down. And she gave me, it had been 20, 30 years or something like that. And I asked, I said, why did you come to confession today? She said, my psychologist sent me. Oh, I said, is your psychologist Catholic? She says, no, he's Jewish. I said, well, why did he send you to have your confession? And he said, well, he's been working for me. He's been working to help me for like 10 years, and I haven't made any progress. And finally he was exasperated and said, by any chance, are you Catholic? I said, yes, I am. She said, go to confession, for crying out loud. Get your head clear. And so she did, and it worked very well. And funny part of the story, a couple of weeks later, I got a check from her for like $112.50. I said, what in the world is... First, we don't charge anything, right?
Right.
But occasionally people throw you a couple of bucks. That's all right. But why $112? And so I called her. I said, did you mean to send that? And she said, that's what I used to pay my shrink. So I'm not seeing him anymore. That's a true story. So why confession? Well, people say it's the same old sins. Well, how often do you do your laundry? It's the same old laundry. How often do you brush your teeth? How often do you do the dishes? Same dishes. What happens if you don't do the dish? What happens if you don't do the laundry? Ooh, soiled soul. So it's a cleansing. It's like taking a shower in the mercy of God. Plus, you need to hear the words of forgiveness. You need to interact with the person who's acting in the person of Christ, unworthy as we are. Priests act in persona Christi, as an alter Christus, another Christ. We're unworthy. Believe me, I'm unworthy. Believe me. Believe me, as the president says. Believe me. The world's never seen anything like it. But it's a cleansing, and it's you hear the words, and almost every confession, well, God loves you, hang in there. You're doing great, man. You affirm the person. Sometimes you kind of have to get a little tougher with people who aren't serious about cleaning up their acts. So, it's a great gift God has given us in the confession. And yet there's tension every time you go to confession, right? Every time, little, that's the devil. Psst, shouldn't go. You shouldn't go.
No, and I hear it all the time from people. It's like you feel such a weight off your shoulders.
Absolutely.
When you get to do that, and that's probably what this lady felt, right?
That's right. I mean, clearly, it's what I'll bet you $112.50. That's what she felt.
I love it. No, this is so good. And again, we're talking about leadership here. So if you're a business leader and you've dealt with, all kinds of people in your career, from military. And what would you say to a Catholic or a Christian, somebody who's a values-based leader? Because one of the things I love to work with, I love working with those faith-based leaders because I know they care about people. I know they care about them going to heaven. I'm working with a young CEO and owner of a company right now.
Yeah.
He literally puts it on his website. Hey, we are God-driven.
Yeah.
And he hires young men that are it's a moving company, so he hires young men that are faith-based, and he tells them, hey, if you're going to work here, we don't put up with the bad language. We don't do these things. We show up on time. We do what we say we're going to do. We want to be trustworthy. Think about that as a moving company, because these people are coming into your house and taking all your personal stuff and hopefully taking good care of it, but they have access to everything, and so he takes great pride. He wants to be the Chick-fil-A of moving companies one day. What advice do you have for people who say, it's so competitive, and am I losing market share by proclaiming my faith, or am I pushing people away? I have an answer to that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, competitive. I was watching the video of the Notre Dame game against Stanford the other day. As you know, Notre Dame's, it's not sure they're going to make the 12-team playoff. I think they are. But Notre Dame never runs up the score. And they were trying to run up the score against Stanford. Yeah. And the announcers were right on. They said, it's not his value. The coach, he's a great coach. He doesn't do that, but he has to do it in this competitive atmosphere of college football. Right. And if he doesn't beat Stanford, he beat them, the score was 49-20, but they would like 70-20. And so, that's the competitive atmosphere. And yet the coach was kind of, and he would admit it, I think, he was kind of breaking one of his own values. And I don't think he'll do that again. Yeah. I know why he did it, but I don't think he'll do that again. Yeah. It's bad form. I don't know if that's an analogy to make the point, but I think it is. It is competitive out there, but and maybe if you really are value-based, especially Christian value-based, you may not succeed in that deal or this deal or that deal. Que sera, sera. Yeah. You still have your soul. Right. You still have your goodness intact. Yeah. Who needed that business really if it required you to prostitute your values? Right? So
right is right, even if no one is watching, right? And wrong is wrong, even if everybody agrees with you. Yeah,
that's well said.
Because so you have to really live your values, because you got to go home. Yeah. At the end of the day, you got to talk to your kids. I love what you said about just when you admit it. And sometimes you're even harder on yourself. All of a sudden, the person that's mad at you is like, "Oh, it's not that bad."
Dissipated.
All of a sudden, they're trying to console you. You're right, Mom. I wrecked the car, and I don't deserve to be called your son anymore. Exactly. It's not that bad.
Put a sandal on his feet and a ring on his fingers. Slaughter the fatted calf.
That's right. My son is back.
Yes,
he's confessed. I ask a lot of questions. What does it mean? This is a signature question, the Lead Different podcast. What does it mean to you to lead different? What is, what as a leader, when you're leading different, what are you doing?
Yeah, I thought about that. I know that's your title, and I know what you're about. I kind of reduced it a little bit, though. What does it mean to lead, period? I realized, and I had some conversations, one especially, I sent you a part of it, with a full colonel, Paul Callan, a dear friend of mine, a 30-year Army veteran, full colonel, and he started as an infantry officer, a branch assignment, had to be combat arms, and then he was a military police officer, then a comptroller, et cetera. So a very successful career. After his career, he worked for, I think, a DOD contract where he gave leadership sessions. He did what you do, okay? Trying to inspire people to be better leaders. Many of those sessions he gave to teachers. And he said, I would always ask the teachers, are you a leader? And he said, no one ever raised their hand. No, I'm a history teacher. I'm a geography teacher. I teach chemistry. I know. Are you a leader? And then he would, and they're good people, right? Your wife will test. I mean, you know how hard they work and how much they care. But a lot of them don't know they're leaders. And Paul would say, he would work then on saying, I am the leader. Those 20 kids, whatever, in my class are mine to lead this day for 50 minutes. And when they leave through those doors, they're going to know more and they're going to be better. And I'm going to lead them in that direction. And that changes the way you teach. That changes the way you think. So many leaders, and this is true of priests, And I spoke, again, a couple of my priest buddies who I get along with, both of them. And so...
All two of your friends?
Yeah. So, a lot of guys don't know they're a leader.
Yeah.
And if you're not a leader, if you're the pastor of a parish, you don't know who you are if you're not a leader, right?
Right.
Then it's, what are you then? Well, I'm a minister. I minister the sacraments. I preach. I do this, that, and the other thing. Yeah. No, your job, Father, is to lead your congregation to the face of Jesus Christ. Yeah. You know, that's what your job is. Yeah. So lead differently. Just lead. I mean, you know, and lead according to principles, obviously. But so many people don't lead. I remember it was a couple of years ago, I was staying in a very large hotel. I won't mention where. And about 10 o'clock, I encountered a problem in the hotel that was quite serious. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, it couldn't wait till the morning. So I called the hotel operator, big hotel, 1,000 rooms place, wow. Okay? Expensive. And I called and I said, listen, I told the operator, he said, well, I don't know, so I'll customer service. Yeah. So he gave me customer service. And well, finally, I said, who is in charge? Yeah. I said, look, in this hotel right now with 1,000 rooms and the staff probably of 50 still working, who is in charge? And he said, I guess I am. See the problem. And that's so common. I guess I am. Yeah. Take charge of this post and all government property in view. You're the leader. And that's a big problem. That's really a big problem. So lead differently. I don't know, just lead and lead according to principles. If you lead according to value principles, you're leading differently than a lot of people. Right. Yeah.
There's a big difference between leading and managing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Managing is totally different. Leading is people want to do. You know, I spent some time with the Explorers this past week in the Federation of North American Explorers.
That's leadership. Yeah, that's right.
These young men, the two young men and their leader, and he invited me to come along, and we were just talking about the 10 ways to be a good leader. And one of them was, the first secret to being a leader, a patrol chief, as they're called, was be prepared to repeat yourself over and over, because these are young kids and they're leading their peers, right? But I think what great leadership lessons. But the other one that I remember was, there are two kinds of people in this world: those who lead and those who get dragged behind.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you lead, and it reminded me of something you said: lead, follow, or get the heck out of the way.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a leadership position, you got to lead.
You got to lead, yeah.
Lead. But that's the number one thing you have to do. Everything. If you do that well, everything else takes care of itself.
You probably know the motto of the U.S. Infantry.
Oh, yeah.
Follow me.
Yeah.
That's the patch when you're at Fort Benning. Follow me. And let me give you a war story.
Yeah,
all right?
Yeah, please.
So I was in Vietnam, a platoon leader at the 82nd, as I mentioned, and we were we ambushed about every night. We laid ambushes. Right. And we did what we call in the area around Saigon. It wasn't a real busy season. Mm-hmm. It was post-Tet 68. Okay. The Viet Cong had been destroyed, and so we were seeing mostly North Vietnamese. But there wasn't a lot of action. And so we would do saturation ambushes. So my 30-man platoon would put out 4 different ambushes. Mm-hmm. And the idea is if one executed, and they seldom did, but if one executed, then the other 3 would then coalesce on the action ambush. And if necessary, the company reaction force would join us to exploit whatever we were involved in. And so we were laying ambush, again, northeast of Saigon, about 20 miles. And one ambush saw bad guys walking. It was estimated maybe 40, probably North Vietnamese / VC, Viet Cong. And so they executed, and so then we coalesced, and I got there, and I took a Starlight scope, which were terrible in 1968. It was like looking through a can of pea soup with a hum. And I never used them. And so the ambush leader said, "Sir, you see them? They're still moving around." I said, and then there was a burst over my head. If I was 6 foot tall, I'd have been killed. And I said, "Oh, they're there.
They're there. I see them."
And so the captain came with the reaction force. He said, "Close with the enemy, John. Close with the enemy." In other words, attack. Right. I said, "Roger that." And I was so scared. Yeah. I was so scared. Grenades were going off, automatic weapons fire. Right. I was so scared. But I was more scared of something else, not being a leader. Yeah. I was more scared, truly, of any one of my soldiers saying, "He's a coward," And so I said, "Follow me."
Yeah.
And I knew they were behind me.
Yeah.
Because I was always behind them in making sure they get paid and fed and got their mail and got their butt kicked when they needed it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a lesson in leadership. And then I spoke to a lot of other guys over the years. I said, were you more afraid of not being courageous than you were of getting killed? I said, yeah, that motivated me. So that's a war story. But
no, that's so true, because, you know, I talk about, you know, you build trust.
That's
you don't
right.
build trust when you get to the battlefield.
No,
you don't
no,
get,
no,
and in a company, you don't build trust when the stock goes down. You build that
and
all along.
You
when
don't
you're
build trust
training.
when you take the parish.
Right.
Who's this new guy?
Yeah.
You know, and especially if your predecessor was popular.
Right.
And it's true in the military too. If you the greatest assignment is to follow a guy who was a dud.
Right.
You know, because you're going to look
The guy
good.
that got fired.
Yeah, the guy
Right.
who, you know, or he was just a dud, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, if you follow a pastor who is very effective, it's especially challenging because they're mad he's gone, and who do you think you are coming in here?
Why are you changing everything?
Yeah, I think you change. People say you should wait a year to change. Rubbish. Change it tomorrow. After a year, they know you and it's personal.
Yeah.
They don't know you the first week. So let them think you're a jerk initially. If you're good, they'll get over it.
Right.
Instead of waiting to make changes. So
It's taking action, right? We talked about
follow
that
me,
earlier.
and that's follow me. And I didn't attend the last priest conference. They have an annual conference, but guys were telling me, someone got up and said we should lead from the back. And I wished I was at the conference now, because I had words for that guy. Lead from the back. Okay, Lieutenant, attack. Okay, Jones, move out. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work, and it doesn't work in the parish. They want to follow you. They want to, and then poco a poco, se va lejos. Little by little, you go far, and then they truly trust you. Yeah. And you know, something happens at some point in the parish when you just flat love your people. Yeah. You love them. And funny enough, I didn't realize that as fully until after I retired, because I still cover a lot of masses in my old parish.
Right.
With your cousin Mike Garcia, he's a good priest. Yes. So I work with Mike. He invites me to help out, and I'm honored to do so. And one time I was looking at and I looked at the people. I said, "Yeah, her son died, and his daughter overdosed with drugs and really was poisoned by fentanyl, and she's looking for her first child. She's very excited. You know them all, and you know their stories, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know, and I realized, God, I said, I love these people. Yeah. I just love them. You know, and I said to him that day, I said, I'll tell you something. It's my Bill Clinton. I got to do a little Bill Clinton. I said, I never realized how much I love you till I left you. I sound like a country western song, don't it? You know? So, yeah. And I would say the same thing of your soldiers. You know, what is love? Yeah. The willingness to extend yourself for the benefit of another. That's a Scott Peck, right, in Road Less Travel. The willingness to extend yourself with no payment, nothing in expectation in return, for the benefit of another. And then I think of the crucifix, the willingness to extend himself for the benefit of another, and that's love. And so soldiers love each other.
Yeah, they do.
They would never say that.
Yeah,
you know, but
you know what? And there's a special bond that you have with people that have experienced what you've experienced. I mean, you and I, like I said, we met, and 5 minutes later, we were best friends because we started talking about what we did.
We both endured 61 days of no sleep and starvation in Ranger School. You're a tough guy, or you wouldn't have, you know. And I always said in Ranger School, they may throw me out, but I ain't quitting.
Yeah,
and that's what a leader doesn't quit.
And that's it's so funny because people ask me all the time. Number one, there's a lot of things you can do when you're 22 that you can't do when you're 42, 52, and 62.
And 80.
Yeah, and 80. Yeah. So you know, the odds are already in your favor because you're 22 years old. You can go through pretty much anything. That's why we all remember. They say, "Oh, the best years of my life." Hey, whatever you were doing, whether you were a soldier, you were an NFL player, a professor, at 22, whatever you were doing at 22, it's the best years of your life. But I remember same thing. I said, I'm a Ranger. Yeah. As long as I don't quit, I'm a Ranger because they'll recycle you 10 times if you're willing to, and your unit's willing to wait for you. You can recycle and you're going to finish. So I said, I'm never going to quit. And as long as you don't quit, you make it through.
Yeah, you have to be fairly tactically proficient. Anyway, you have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
And that comes out. Like if
Oh,
you're graded on patrols,
Right.
you have to pass like 4 out of 5 patrols, and
Right.
you're the man. And they got there. There's a ranger instructor, an RI there. He's watching every step.
Right.
He's well fed and well slept. You're not.
Right.
And so if you got to know your stuff, tactically and technically proficient. Same as in your business, same as a priest.
Yeah.
You have to know the scriptures, you have to know the theology,
Yeah.
you have to know your stuff. And if you don't, they'll know you know. I was pastor in Los Alamos for 11 years. I was the dumbest guy in the
with
church.
all those scientists,
Yeah,
all those
they're-
PhDs, right?
You're absolutely brilliant. So yeah, you have to know your stuff. If I made a mistake in a homily in Los Alamos, a little factoid mistake, the wrong date or
Right.
something, I'd get like 4 emails on Monday. And instead of saying, Father, very good homily, I enjoyed it. However, you had the wrong date. They'd say, you're wrong. And
They get to the point,
They
right?
and I loved them. I have to, honestly, it was a great 11 years of my life ministering to the good people. 1,800 PhDs there.
Yeah.
1,800.
Biggest concentration of PhDs in the world.
I know, I'm sure, yeah.
In the world,
And
yeah.
many faithful, devout Catholics.
That's fantastic.
Incredible number of incredible devout Catholics, far more devout than the pastor was. Seriously,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were there every day.
They're a remarkable bunch of. When I first got there, they were under siege by a pacifist named Father John Deere, a Jesuit, who would have demonstrations against nuclear weapons in the very. He called Los Alamos some terrible names, and the people there were demonic, is the word he used. So I did an op-ed piece about 800 words in the Albuquerque Journal, and I took them on.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the fight.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, it was good. So
Well, as you said, you enjoy the fight, and that fight doesn't leave you. We might get older, but you still kind of want to prove yourself every once in a while.
Funny enough, I kind of enjoy it. I wish I didn't enjoy it so much. I wish I could look back at some of the limited successes I've had as a priest and say, well, it was hard work, but we got. But in terms of facing or confronting the evil among us, okay? But I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
I just said, I got him. He's no longer wearing a collar.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. It's something I probably need to work with spiritually. But
And well, you had some hard work to do,
Yeah.
and we all have hard work to do, and
Yeah.
we never know what you look at a person, you never know what they're going through, right? You know when
Absolutely.
I'll work with an organization, get hired by a CEO, and I think, they've got it going on. Why do they need a coach? And boy, we start digging.
Yeah,
in.
very true,
We
isn't
start
it?
finding out, stuff at home is not going great. Stuff, with their partner's not going great. They're in debt more than you thought they were. Everything looks good on the outside, but we've got. So there's all those things, and we don't know that. And I think we have to give people grace.
In the case of the offenders in the church, I don't care.
Right.
You're gone, baby.
Yeah.
You hurt a child. You're out of here.
Yeah.
With immediate, with aggression.
Yeah. Close with the enemy.
Close with the enemy, but fire when entered.
Fire when ready. Right.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
That's exactly. I hadn't thought about that. Yes.
It was a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
That's the enemy. The enemy.
Yeah.
Because we lose good people from the church because of
secondly,
that.
that's true, but what's the big problem?
Well, you're hurting children.
You're hurting children.
Yeah.
Who will carry that to their grave, premature grave in many cases.
Right.
That's the unforgivable aspect of this.
Yeah.
Not the money, not the reputation of Holy Mother Church, the fact we hurt a child. And I accept the responsibility for that.
Right.
I would never do anything like that. But I'm wearing the collar.
Right.
And so the buck stops here. And I've got my nose in everyone's tent. And if I find something, I'm going to bring it forward.
Let's bring it to
And
light.
if every priest did that for 50 years, we wouldn't even be discussing this.
Right. And that's the other part that's important to understand, because if we'd had higher standards and we'd looked a little closer, we could have probably sussed them out sooner. But that happens in every industry because it's not that,
You're too
'cause
kind.
because people will say, if you let the priest marry. No, these are child molesters.
Oh, that's
they were going to, if they didn't become priests, they were going to become teachers. They wanted to be around children, so they were going to become teachers and were going to work at a community center. They're going to go where there are
Most
children.
child
That's where they
molesters are molest their own children.
Yeah.
Are married and have kids and molest their own children. That majority.
because it's always the people that are closest to them, right? Uncles, aunts, sometimes.
Yeah,
and
most of them have been hurt themselves. I mean,
Right.
in mitigation and extenuation, you could make the case, but I was never at the point of even caring about their case.
Sure.
We had a fire, and we had to put that fire out,
Right.
and we have to keep that fire out because you never can rest on your laurels. We've
Right.
come a long way, I have to say,
Yeah.
and I'm proud of that. And again. But so you don't rest on your laurels, and the idea that many of these guys were hurting kids was really a secret. A lot of people knew. Believe me, a lot of people knew.
Yeah.
Believe me.
And they moved them around, and
They moved them
hide 'em.
around,
Yeah.
and they come on,
Scary.
scary,
Well,
because they weren't leaders.
no, and they didn't want to lead, and they didn't want
No.
to take ownership.
No.
I don't want it to be known that that happened on.
They
on
were
my
company
watch.
men.
Right.
You know that term.
Oh yeah, company men.
I don't like company men.
Yeah.
Because everything they do is to make the company look better.
Right.
Not that's their value.
Yeah.
And so in the military, perhaps I was a company man to some extent, but because I was led by good men for 20 years.
Right.
I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I never had a boss that was unreasonable or unethical. I didn't. But that hasn't been the case here, as with the problem we were discussing. And so sometimes you don't worship the hierarchy. You worship God and His holy church you minister to. So I think I know we're on the mend.
Right.
And it's been tough, but again, I don't mind a fight. It's all
I
right.
think that's important to in business too, because people say, well, Dan, you're leaning into your faith, and the folks I work with lean into their faith. How is that going to impact your business? And I say, look, if you look at my faith and it's at its essence, it's about doing the right thing.
It's good for business.
Do you want to? It's good. It should be good for business.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are things that have gone wrong, and there's people that have done bad things. But if you look at the faith itself, hey, the rules are good. You follow those 10 commandments, you're gonna live a good life.
20 years ago, Goldman Sachs got in trouble for taking a lot of nearly worthless instruments or products, wrapping them up, putting lipstick on a pig, and selling them for 10 times their worth, and they got caught. Goldman Sachs, a gazillion-dollar company, right? So if they had just done what was true and honest, that never would have happened. I hope they've learned their lesson. I don't follow finance that closely, but
they're still doing well.
Yeah, they're still. You sound like you
They are
got a
still
couple of
doing
shares
well,
there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much, Father John Carney, for joining us today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. This is, I know we're going to have you back. I know I've got Father Michael on the docket.
Oh, is Mike Garcia?
Oh, yeah. Father Michael Garcia is
fabulous.
going to be on. Father Pomposello is going to be on.
Cool.
And then,
That's great.
And we're trying to get Father Adrian, but he's so darn busy because he's in the middle of it right now.
He sure is.
He's taking over a new parish, plus he's got the vocations director
Right,
job.
exactly.
But we'll get him on the air, and I think you're going to be a hard act to follow.
I know.
So thank you so much for being on, guys. If you learned something today, if something caught your attention, don't forget to follow the podcast. Don't forget to hit like you're supposed to, subscribe. Give us your comments. What did you think about Father John Carney's views on leadership, on transferring from a military leader to being a pastor, the sex abuse scandal, anything that caught your attention? I'm going to give you the last word. What would you say to a young man considering or thinking about the priesthood?
Yeah.
What would you say what would help them make that decision?
Yeah, I would, and I've done that, of course.
Yes.
It's a total commitment of your life to something bigger than yourself that you're willing to die for. A total commitment forever in your earthly journey.
Yeah.
You'll never be worthy, so don't worry about that. Stay in the state of grace and do your best. But you're a sinner. You'll be a sinner tomorrow. You'll be a sinner next year. And I don't mean that in the big sins. Right. So I'd say roll up your sleeves. We really need you. And as a matter of fact, what I would use in my 9 years vocation director, I'd say we're really hurting here in this archdiocese.
Yeah.
And I don't need you if you're not ready to fight and to clean this mess up by shepherding the people of God. If you're not really, you're going to work hard. You're going to be cursed. If that sounds unattractive to you, go to some diocese that doesn't have a problem, and if there is such a thing, and there isn't, So yeah, it's not unlike being a soldier,
Right.
You roll up your sleeves and get to work. Yeah,
Absolutely. What do you say we end the show on that note?
Roger that.
Let's do that. Great to have you.
Danny,
Thank
my
you
pleasure.
so much. And yeah, we got to leave them with our motto: Rangers lead the way.
Rangers lead the way.
All the way.
And a quick little prayer, if I may.
Amen. Yes, please.
Father, we ask you to bless our wonderful listeners today. Let them know how greatly they're loved by your Son, Jesus, and by his holy church. We ask you to bless Danny. He really cares a lot, and he's devoted his life right now to help others lead in a valued-oriented way. So bless him. May this ministry expand. May the podcast expand and bring many others. Make them better leaders and better Christians, or even just better people. You don't have to be a Christian for God to love you. He loves us all. And so we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, brother.
Holy Spirit. Amen.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
We'll see you guys next week on the Lead Different podcast. Thank you so much, Father John.
Rangers lead the way.
All the way.
All the way.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.